Welcome to the Wisdom Check by Tabletop to Keyboard. This is going to be our bi-weekly podcast where we discuss things such as Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, I think maybe we need to turn up my mic a little bit, guys. How about some more gain?
This is the intro to end all intros. Talk about Dungeons, Dragons, and
Now, I don't think that's proper. This is a family show after all. This is the intro we could use, fellas. It's good, clean fun for everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Check, where we have wholesome conversations about the dilemmas we face every day.
Nah, hold on a second. I got your intro right here. Yeah, that's better. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Well, I'm right, Jeff's wrong. We're gonna have guests on to talk about it. It's gonna be awesome. Because I said so.
He is right. He did say so. I don't know. Is surf music the best music for a podcast about D&D?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
This just in, nobody can agree on our intro for this podcast. So we're just going to start. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. Roll for initiative. Fuck. A 1. It's like every time.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Wisdom Check here at TT2KB. I am Dustin. With me always over there is Jeff. And today with us, we have Chuck, one of the DMs from Defenders of Kobold. He's here with us today.
Hey!
We are excited to have you.
Yes, I am fantastic. So I'm happy for you too.
We always book the most humble of guests.
True story, bro.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay. Let's see. I'm Chuck. I guess that's the first part. I am one of the moving forces behind the Defenders of Kobold. We're a Dungeons and Dragons Twitch stream. We play really, really poorly on live stream, and it's embarrassing and fantastic. We make sure that we don't remember what we did when we played, so we're just as bad the next time. It's amazing. And I also roll with this one crew called Notorious DMG. We're just a group of DMs from other podcasts and streams, and we decided that we just hate being forever DMs, so we all DM for each other, and it's pretty solid. You should watch it and watch me and watch these guys because we're fucking great.
That's still probably the coolest title of all.
Yeah.
And the Notorious DMG group, does that play on Defenders of Kobold? It also plays over on Jowsum, correct? I know he's
we are all distributing it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just kind of like, who wants to distribute it? And we're all like, yeah, we all want the views. So until Notorious DMG starts, making some money, then we'll break it off on its own thing. But so, I mean, you're going to catch it on Jowzams, you're going to catch it on Defenders. Bert of Steam Steal and Murder podcast, he's putting that out on his. The Monday nights, they're sticking it out on theirs. We got Steven the DM and Khalil Roberson, and I think they're both putting their stuff out on YouTube from time to time. So we're just throwing all that shit everywhere and seeing which wall it sticks to.
Yeah, it's a great time to be doing this stuff. There's so many great content creators out there, and we love having you guys around.
Well, good.
Yeah. So what are you playing currently?
Right now, the game I'm running, we just wrapped up a little 4th edition stint, which is, one of the things we'll talk about tonight. But we're actually getting ready to go into some Dungeon Crawl classics. We're going to do the Portal Under the Stars, funnel / meat grinder this Friday. And so I'm just waiting to see how many PCs and how many players I get to kill on stream. So
got any predictions so far?
I think I'm going to get Chris good. he's a really nice and trusting guy.
Oh
And
no.
so I'm just gonna undercut him. Just
So you're like every player gets 4 characters before the funnel. Like for those for the viewers who don't know how this works, everyone randomly rolls every single stat on their sheet with just 3d6. So I mean, you're already looking at
play where they
terrible
lay.
scores. Just wherever they are,
Mhm.
straight down the line. You don't get to sort them or anything, and then you just throw these 4 characters for each player into this funnel game. That's like game 0.
Yeah,
And whoever survives becomes the PCs that everybody plays from that point on.
absolutely. It's amazing. I mean, it's straight down the line, 3d6, like you said. You roll for occupation. You're level 0, so you're just a peasant. So you roll for your occupation. So, oh man, you're a carpenter. So maybe you've got a saw, and that's your weapon going into the dungeon. Or
So
you're like,
Are you even a D3 worth of hit points? Like, are you 1 hit point? Like,
you roll a d4,
it is a D4 at least. Okay.
and then you,
mighty
I
generous.
forget.
You
what
subtract 4.
you roll a d4, you add your constitution modifier, then you subtract 4. No, it's a d4 plus I forget the specific term they use for constitution in the game. But yeah, d4, and you add that. So you have to have a minimum of 1 HP. So luckily you don't get to die during character creation.
So there's a bar that when you walk into the dungeon, initially it must have 1 hit point to enter.
Right.
Just a pile of dead corpses there.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
So yeah, no, we're getting ready to do that. I'm excited. It's going to be such a blast.
And that's going to be Friday, correct?
This Friday, starting at we say 8:45 Central, but we're fucking slow when it comes to getting set up. So it's gonna be like 9 o'clock Central this Friday.
We understand.
We have no idea
We feel
about
your
that.
pain.
Yeah.
We are punctual always.
I finally got it right this time. I started just broadcasting as his 10 for our Everstorm game, and it went off without a hitch. See, I finally figured out the right
There you go.
time to put out there for it. So
That's the trick, man.
So this fourth that game you came from,
Mm-hmm.
how long did you run that one or
Well,
participate in?
this one that we just finished up on the stream, it was I think it's going to be it's about 7 to 8 hours of gameplay that we did. We stretched it out over 2.5 of our sessions. The games I run do every other Friday, 4 to 6 hours. So this was a relatively short thing.
Okay.
Somehow the Notorious DMG crew suckered me into running 4th edition for them. So I'm like, well, I guess I better write something. And then I wrote it. I'm like, I guess I better make sure it's actually good content. So I'm like, you know what? Group of friends that I meet in real life, you're my guinea pig. So yeah, but in a previous life, I started out playing 4th edition. And we probably played it for a good couple of years. We did not know what we were doing. So it was just a train wreck, but we had fun, and then eventually moved into Pathfinder and the D&D Next.
Gotcha.
playtest.
So how'd you get into that in the first place?
In 4th edition, I was sitting at home one day, and I was always a fan of the old Shadowrun Sega Genesis game.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
I
ever
always
see those terrible commercials for that, by the way?
Oh, it's fucking great.
Oh, man. If you haven't seen that, chat, definitely look it up after
Check
this
it
stream.
out.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That
No.
had to happen.
Right. So I we're sitting at home. The wife, she's watching something on TV, and I'm playing that old Sega Shadowrun game on my phone on an emulator. And I'm like, you know what? I want the book. I want the book this is based off of.
That is
So
a crunchy system, man.
Yeah. Well, we hopped in the car and we went down to our local Hastings, and I went to their role-playing section to go find myself some Shadowrun, and they didn't fucking have it.
Oh, no.
Not in the least. And I'm like, I am so disappointed that I have to buy something to make myself feel better. So I bought that, 4th edition red box starter set.
Awesome.
And took it home, read through it, did their little thing to make your player. I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat.
Mhm.
So I made my wife go through it, and she's like, whatever, you fucking nerd, leave me alone. And then, I just called my friends. I'm like, hey, you need to come over tonight, and I don't care what you're doing. So we started there, and that's
straight for that hand banana, huh?
Straight for the hand banana. You tonight.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So 4th edition was where you started with D&D?
That's where we started. Okay. Slightly incorrect. Way back in high school, I had this friend that came down from Seattle. He was into illicit substances. And one night we were hanging out in his friend's apartment.
And you mainline D&D.
And we mainline D&D. And he's just like, we're playing D&D. And he made me roll, and I didn't fucking get it. And I remember, like, we walked down the street, and, like, it was, I don't know what was going on. But that was technically my first experience, but I didn't know what I was doing, right? Just doing the motions, and I didn't die.
Hey,
but
that's
yeah,
a plus.
Serious D&D was, I just happened upon the starter box and strong-armed my friends into playing, and here we are.
Beautiful.
So,
I feel like I keep talking and not letting Dustin come in. So
that's all right. I was just listening to how he got started. I was one of the things I was actually going to ask him at one point was if 4th Ed is the first real D&D that he got into, because what I find is a lot of people have very strong, heavy attachments to their first version of D&D that they played. Like they're like 2nd Ed AD&D will always have a special place in my heart because that's what we started with. That's like when we first got into it. So like I think there's a lot of that, like whatever your first D&D was, like that sometimes is your favorite, even though you may move on to other editions or go backwards. As in your case, you're like going back into the dark ages with Dungeon Crawl Classics there. Like
right.
You're going way back in the time machine there. But it doesn't matter which version you go back to or which one you even end up playing the most. Like I think people always have like a tendency to gravitate towards that first game that they sat down and played. Yeah,
I mean it's all about that nostalgia factor. And that's what grabs you by the short hairs and drags you back every time is, now,
generally a lot of people don't have very strong, good feelings towards 4th Ed in the general player base. So do you find that's true? Like when you're putting 4th Ed content out that people are like, screw 4th Ed. I don't want to watch 4th Ed.
No, actually 4th edition, I got a lot of positive attention from 4th edition. A lot of people coming out like, oh, hey, I don't like watching live play D&D, but I love 4th edition. So I had quite a few people send us messages and be like, I really love that you're playing 4th edition. I'm like, well, you fucking are out of luck because I'm going to stop playing it here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, there's a lot of feedback. There's enough feedback that actually we sat down as a crew and like, people like it and I'm desperate for attention. Should we keep playing 4th edition? And the answer was no. Absolutely no.
So did your players not like 4th Ed that much?
We liked 4th Ed. They liked 4th Ed. There's aspects of 4th Ed that everybody at the table liked.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the combat. And combat in 4th edition can get so tedious. And we're all kind of, impatient. And we don't like the full, tactical combat of it. Because that's what 4th Ed is. It's great at crunchy, tactical flanking and positioning and abilities. And we're really like, let's get this through. Let's do something epic and move on. And, 4th edition didn't set so well for that.
I think it's really where 5th Ed found its stride. Is I find that it really walks the line between the role play and the tactical. Like
Absolutely.
I think it's tactical enough for people that kind of like to do some tactical stuff, but it also like it doesn't go so hard into the crunch that like people getting into the game can get into it. Like it's a better gateway drug than 4th Ed probably was to get people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think
like I said, we were talking about it.
We
were talking about it before the stream a little bit. That I always felt like with 4th Ed when I first picked up the books, the first thing I noticed was that they literally labeled classes by their role.
Yeah,
tank, DPS,
striker,
controller. Like you had those titles. And as somebody who had played World of Warcraft and other MMOs, I always felt like it was an intentional grab to get MMO players, in particular World of Warcraft players, to come in and try D&D. Like I felt like that was what it was always geared very much for, was that MMO dungeon experience.
Yeah.
Only in a long format because, D&D dungeons take forever sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. They came out with that. Was it the 4E Essentials or whatever it is? Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah,
I'm only
540. Yeah.
They had more of them than I did.
Yeah. The Essentials was kind of like a simplified, streamlined version of the game. But the thing that got me is like, you go out and you would buy this box of minis for 4th edition, and it had the rules for Essentials in it. But it was just like, here's a section like, if you want to play this without a DM, here's how you can do it. And I'm like, oh, this is just chess, right? So I mean, but following back on kind of what you were saying, 5th edition, if you're playing it with the map, you're doing it right. If you're playing it in Theater Mind, you're doing it right.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It can fully support 4th edition. If you're playing it without a map, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's gonna be frustrating and nebulous, and not gonna.
It's definitely a very tactical, map-oriented thing for sure. And I don't know, like that was one of the things that actually appealed to me. Like I am definitely, if I'm getting into a fight scene, I like that kind of tactics and like really thinking through my turns. And for me, I really enjoyed the fact that everyone had powers, like moves that were actually interesting besides I swing my sword.
I like to describe it as everyone's a wizard.
Yeah, it kind of was.
Yeah, everyone's got this, spell book they got that they can, essentially cash shit out of. So yeah, everyone's a wizard in 4th edition. Everyone has something that's special. If you walk in and say, I hit it with my sword, you're doing it wrong.
So. I feel like for 4th edition, one of the big problems they had was that they stripped out the descriptions. And so like a lot of the fluff that you would find in the books was removed, probably to save page space, but and what you got left with was a toolkit for combat, essentially.
Right.
Which, when you boil it down to rule systems, I mean, that's basically what rule systems are for, is to handle the crunch,
Right. I've got my 4E player's handbook here. I'm looking at that. I mean, you're right. Like 4th edition has all this crunch, all these mechanics for what your abilities do. But then when you get to your description, like I'm on page 136 looking at warlock abilities, high level. And at most you get 2 sentences per, 5th edition, you have a spell, you've got a box of text, like this is what that spell does. 4th edition, here's a couple sentences to give you an idea, but here's the crunch, and that's how the crunch works. So I mean, I definitely reiterating what you were saying, it's a mechanics focus.
It's a very heavy mechanics game. And and it was good for I think some groups, and like you said, other groups I think just weren't that into it. And around that time, if I remember right, that was when Pathfinder was also getting big. And so I think a lot of people, when Pathfinder came out, it was a more natural successor to D&D 3.0.
It was the successor. Well, the Pathfinder is a continuation of D&D 3.5, because D&D 3 and 3.5 were that open license. And then when 4th edition came out, all of the hardcore 3 and 3.5 players were like, fuck this shit. We're going to go home and make our own game with blackjack and hookers. And there came Pathfinder.
And that was how Pathfinder was born. Like it was out of the revolt of 4th Ed, we got Pathfinder out of it, basically, is what it boiled down to.
Which is amazing considering how crunchy Pathfinder is.
Right. Well, that's the thing that always amazed me about it, is like they got mad at a crunchy game and then went and made a crunchier game. Like it was
3.5 was crunchy. Like there was so much crunch in 3.5. It was just different crunchy.
Right.
3.5, like they were just fucking throwing numbers at everything, and you could do anything, and you could just, slap whatever you want onto whatever, and you could make amazing things. 4th edition was very crunchy in a very linear direction. It was very, here's point A. When you get to this other level, you can pick options 1, 2, 3. And then from there, options 1, 2, 3. It was kind of, I hate to use it because I don't want to put 4th edition down quite so hard. It was a very dumb version of crunch. It was very, very linear, very like, if you look at like the character trees from like Diablo 2, Borderlands, that's what 4th edition had for leveling up.
Right.
Yeah, talent trees essentially.
Right. Like I said, it was built like a video game. It really was. Like the way that you leveled up and the way that you put things on there, it was very much the way that you would build your MMO characters build, or a game like Diablo. Like that's how it was built to be. Like and it and that was and like I said, I really felt like they were really trying to grab that audience at the time and bring them into D&D, and it with pretty marginal success, I would say, at that. Like
according to the sales, I would say that one thing that was a big strength of 4E though was that they brought everything into standards. So like you had keywords that were universal, like that's what they mean. Like how often can I use this? It explicitly tells you. How do these powers interact? It explicitly tells you. Like there's no question about how a system works. It's spelled out for you.
Right. And that was great. You know, standardization of anything is usually a fantastic thing. And it also hit another really great point in kind of that standardization across the classes. It was very difficult for you to make a character that was useless. I mean, you could do it. You could do it. You could do it.
There was always one choice out of the three that was the best choice.
Yeah.
And then there was like the other two were kind of like maybe flavor choices to a degree, but they were far more, they were going to be useful if certain situations would come up. They were very, I guess, situational is the word I'm looking for, but they were far more situational than there was the one that was like, I guarantee you in this game, this is going to happen more.
Right. Well, I mean, if you take a player who's never played D&D before, and you give them the 3.5 player's handbook and you say, I want you to make a level 1 character, and then I want you to level it up to level 5. And then you do the same thing for that same player with the 4th edition book. Make a level 1 character and level it up. And if they don't know anything about D&D, the odds of them having what you would consider like a good functionable character in 4th edition is going to be way higher. You know,
I agree.
For Notorious DMG, well, the first thing we ran was 3.5, ran by Seth from the Monday Nights. And making a character in that, man, like there was all these like, I made it and he and I are going over it. And he's like, oh, well, this is because it doesn't correlate with that, and that. And like, oh, this doesn't work how you think it does. It's like this. So 4th edition, it was easier to make a functionable character right out of the gate. And
the other thing that was good about it is that the design of 4E basically forced you to think party-wise.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You were a team player that fit in a certain way. You had a niche, and that's like how you're set up.
Well, like, you know, like you said earlier, Dustin, like it told you what your role in the party was. So that's absolutely like, you know, if you want to be a healer, here's the healer, and it labels it big. Like, this is what you're going to be doing with this class.
Right. And I think that's part of why so many established players hated it.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you can't put me in that box.
Right.
I want to play my paladin as a complete DPS murder machine. You can't tell me how to play, stupid game. You can't.
Let's just go ahead and cut it down to every person's like, hey, I'm a damage guy. How dare you?
Right. That's a funny joke. In Pathfinder, I played a cleric who was just DPS. Like I was a fucking laser cleric.
Yeah.
And I was just lighting people on fire from across the battlefield. And it was amazing. Couldn't do that in 4th edition. Because 4th edition, your cleric was a healer. Which
the Radiant cleric you could do that with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They were the laser.
Well, I think what happened was I think, like I said, when the books first came out, there was not 7,000 books. There was like 5 books. True. And when you had those 5 books, you couldn't do a lot of those other things yet.
Right.
The fluff hadn't been added in.
Right.
So when people first pick up the new edition books, you get the DMG, the Monsters Manual, your Player's Handbook, you sit down with them, you got your limited amount of options. I think the Wizard was the only controller class.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, at start, it was the only one. So it's like every party had to have a wizard. You couldn't go into a dungeon without one. Like,
absolutely.
You know, the minions, which is a whole other, you know, mechanic to the game. Like it required you to have a controller. So, you know, you had to have a wizard. Like it was literally no choice. One of you is playing a wizard. So I think that when you had that was the world people were living in when they first experienced it. A lot of your established people coming out of 3.0, 3.5, they walk into this thing and that's what they get.
Yeah.
Or you need one fighter or a paladin. Take a pick. You can have a rogue, a warlock, or whatever, and then you had to have your wizard and a healer, and that was very much how you were going to be.
Yeah, it really enforced that team where you needed to make your balanced team, and I hate balanced teams. Like I don't.
Oh yeah.
I don't let my players work together when it comes to, we're starting something up and they're making a team. And they're like, oh, should I play this? I should play that. I'm like, no, you can go fuck yourself. Go to the corner and make whatever character you want to make. And
we did that for Everstorm. We did that for Everstorm this time. We normally don't, but we did this time around.
I personally don't like that approach, but I could see where other people would.
I do, because I think it gets people to make a character. Yeah. And I think it gets them to think of their character not in terms of what am I in this group. But I think that's where 5th ed differs from 4th ed and like 3.0 Pathfinders. I think like Pathfinder, you kind of needed to know the roles, and 4th ed you had to know the roles.
Yeah.
And like if you wanted to be functional on the combat maps in Pathfinder 3.5, like you kind of needed to know what everyone else was doing. So, but I think at 5th ed you can just go in and you're fine.
Just wing it. And I've always been of the stance that, if everyone comes to the table with a well thought out character that they're excited to play, they're not playing this character because the team needs it. They're playing the character because that's what they want to play. Right. It's up to my job as a DM to provide them what they need to successfully navigate the world. And, play who you want to be, and don't. It really bothers me when someone says like, well, I'm playing the cleric because we need a healer, but I would really rather be playing a rogue or
I think if somebody would rather play something, then go for it. Where I think it gets a little iffy with this approach, though, is that like when you have people coming to the table with whatever character they want, and suddenly they all come back as DPS classes, and you go, or like I'm all melee guys, and you're like, well, I don't have a niche anymore. Like I am just the same as everybody else.
That's true. I mean,
so then it's
a little weird.
But I mean, if you put 5 people down with a book and say make a character, 5 people coming back with the exact same melee build fighter in Pathfinder is pretty slim.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can come back we had 2 paladins in our last Pathfinder game, and Wilhelm and Saber were very different paladins. Yeah. He multi-classed some with Oracle because whatever you are at level 1. I think that was the difference with Pathfinder as well, is people had a tendency to come to the table with all 20 levels already mapped out. This is what I'm doing throughout this whole game.
Absolutely.
And I don't do that like 99% of the time. I don't do that shit. I just come with a level 1, and where I do from there, I figure it out as I go based on what the story is doing, and I usually go with it from there.
I think if you have an edition that has prerequisites and like pieces you have to have in place in order to get the next thing you want, you have to plan. Like, it kind of forces that. Otherwise, you just don't get access to the things you think you want to do in the game.
Well, I think some things are okay like that, like Cleave, Great Cleave. Those things go down a progression. So once you take Cleave, you're going down Great Cleave later on. I think it's like when you start to rope in a bunch of other stuff in there, I don't think it's as important.
Yeah.
But that's just the way those systems were designed, though. And I think it was made for people who like to do that sort of stuff. Yeah. Which is why I don't think that system that's why I like 5th ed so much better already. Like one game in, and I can already tell I'm a bigger 5th ed fan. So
I'm actually already bored with 5th ed's mechanics. And this is the first time we played it.
Yeah.
I played like 5 games. I'm like, okay, I know the whole system. I'm done exploring it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a solid take. Back on the mapping your characters in Pathfinder, I would do that. In 4th edition, when we played that, like I already had my characters, the PDFs for each level. Like when it's like level up, I'm like, I put that one away and here's the next character sheet ready. Like I had it all fucking planned out. In 5th edition, when I'm a player, I make my character I make my personality, and then I build everything around that. And then I might map out a level or 2, just, at least for the big levels, like a level 3, what am I going to do at level 3? And then I'll just kind of wing it at each level. Or if I see something like, I really like this right now, but I need to hit those prerequisites, then I can plan for that. But I do like that 5th edition. I don't know. Maybe I matured as a player. Maybe not. Maybe it, de-emphasizes the need to be so tactical in your planning.
Well, they did that by just not having options. So
Yeah.
it's like, hey, what do you do when you level up? I roll hit points.
Mm-hmm.
I write down the one thing it says I get. I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
was there a
If
choice to
you-
making that? No.
No.
Oh, fourth level. You can either take stats or you can pick a
Mhm.
feat.
If
Yeah.
you look in fourth edition it's at the beginning of the book or near the beginning of the book, the level progression chart,
Mhm.
it's ridiculous. There's like at least a feat every other level. The levels there aren't feats, you're getting a class ability.
Mhm.
There's racial abilities tied in there too.
Mhm.
Yeah, at least in fourth edition, like every single level you had something to look forward to.
Yeah,
So-
I found that really exciting. You know, like
Yeah.
I like the building, I like the kitting things out, making
Yeah.
decisions and seeing how they play out. With fifth ed, I feel like they're basically saying, "Oh, you pick this class. Okay, here's your character. Done."
Yeah, and I see. To me, it doesn't matter. Like I think at last game, somebody in chat, I think it was Narabi actually, was like, "Hey, what level are you guys?" I answered 5. We're totally 6th level.
Totally
I didn't even know what level I
Right.
was. Everyone else was like 6. I wrote it 5. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm wrong. I'm not even that level." Like that's
Yeah.
how little I care about the build like part of it. Like I don't even know what level I am.
Well, to be
I'm
fair,
just
even
playing
at
the character
Pathfinder,
and I'm things I want
you're
to do.
rarely the right level in the party. You'd be like 3 levels behind everybody else. We're like, man, you suck. Like, what is going on around here? How do you only have half the hit points of the wizard?
That was
That's-
a fair amount of time there where I didn't know. I missed a few game sessions and we'd leveled the end and I wouldn't know it, so I'd come back and
Oh.
be a level behind him. Like, oh,
That-
that's why
yeah.
I'm not rare.
Yeah.
That'd do it. Yeah. We actually and DM Alex on the Defenders, he runs the alternating Fridays for me.
Mhm.
We're getting ready to go into the Tomb of Horrors in his game in 5th edition. And to
Good
get
luck.
us to get us ready for that, we went from level 9 to level 12. Like he's like, all right, we're getting ready to go to break. We go to break. He's like, everyone level up to 12 right now. And so when we come back, you're going to be level 12. And, I picked a couple new spells. I rolled my hit points. And that was it.
Yeah.
I think I got to pick a feat, but 3 large levels like that, it was kind of a little disappointing, I guess. So I get your,
Mhm.
but in 5th edition, we definitely, I don't know. I feel like the book, it includes all that flavor and everything into it.
Mhm.
So it emphasizes the role play, I think, a little bit better than 4th edition does.
Yeah, I think the only thing they gave you to tinker with was your personality. And again, I think they did some good things in 5e,
Mhm.
adding in the flaws and the bonds and ideals,
Yeah.
personality traits. And that stuff is amazing because it definitely puts your mind in a different place.
Yeah.
I just wish I had more of the crunch that 4e had.
Yeah. In the playtest back when it was D&D Next, there was one of the versions of it. I don't remember the specific terms that they used, but it was essentially there was 4 axes that your character takes for creating your character. There's of course your class and your race. Then they had your background and essentially like an occupation.
Mhm.
And it was amazing. Like I don't know why they dropped it. But I was trying to recreate my Pathfinder cleric, that the fire cleric,
Mhm.
that just DPS'd for everything, and I was able to pick enough stuff that I was able almost to get a really great recreation, and it just gave that extra bit of mechanical crunch to really let you hone in, and they dropped it, and I was kind of disappointed that it didn't make it into the final game.
Yeah, they're probably just simplifying. I think that is what they did with the transition from 4e to 5e. Is they went, wow, 4e is really great for our established player base. We have a specific group of people that are really into the
Mhm.
progression from advanced to
Yeah.
3, 5, and now they know this system.
Yeah.
And new players went, what?
Yeah.
I'm out.
Just look at the popularity of D&D right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hard to argue
5th
with.
edition. Yeah, they did something right?
Mhm.
But yeah,
I kind of
And
wonder
what I find when I go around through Twitch and I go through a lot of channels, as you know, I'm out there all the time. What amazes me when I see the D&D games out there is how much of 5th ed is being done virtually theater of the mind versus maps. Like I kind of would have thought it would be the other way.
Oh no.
But the more I get out there, the more it's theater of the mind. Like
yeah,
90% of what I'm seeing out there is it's maybe a lot of them have a map I don't get to see. Like, there's a couple of channels that I watch that I know they have a map, and we just don't get to see it. But a lot of them, I think, are doing it just without a map. Like,
well, in our college years, if you think about the LARPing players, their D&D games, their World of Darkness games and stuff, everyone that I ever went to and participated in, none of them used maps. It was all theater in mind every time.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, whoa, you guys don't use a map? Like, yeah, of course we don't use a map. I'm like, who uses a map? I'm like, huh, okay.
Well, I mean, if you're just playing at home, if you're not, like before Roll20, if you were just playing at home when we first got 4th Ed, things like that, you had to buy a map. Like, you had to know where to get one. Like, those were not just in every store. You could just go to your local Walmart and buy a DM map. Like, they just didn't have them. Like, you had to go, you had to know where to go. There wasn't Amazon. You couldn't just Amazon one to your house, like, in 10 minutes. Like, you'd maybe eBay at the best. You know, like, it wasn't as easy to just come across this stuff like it is now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's interesting with the popularity too, because I some of it I think is that they just made it open for new players to come into the hobby, and they targeted that specifically. But the other part seems like there's been like an acceptance publicly of gaming. It's become popular now.
Yeah,
and that seemed to coincide with that time period when 5e came out. I don't know if 5e is the cause of that or if it just succeeded because of it, you know?
We can blame it all on the fucking hipsters, man.
Yeah,
they did this to us. No, absolutely.
Wearing.
Yeah, like, you know, back when we played 4th edition Pathfinder, like, I didn't fucking tell people that, you know, but now, like, 5th edition, like, people started like, oh, people are paying attention. Critical Role came along and that fucking blew up.
Yeah,
sure did.
And now it's like, oh yeah, I played D&D. People are like, oh, that's so fucking cool. And like, it's very rare, right?
Nope.
It's very rare to find people that aren't super fucking jazzed about you playing D&D. It's you know,
it's so true.
Yeah.
Now, what amazes me sometimes is the things from 4th Ed that didn't translate up to 5th.
Yeah.
Like, at what point did they realize it was a good idea to give people a bank of hit points at level 1 and then immediately decide to go right back to not giving you the bank of hit points anymore? Like, that was one of the best things about 4th Ed. I was like, I start out with 30 some hit points. I'm not going to die in one attack. Like, this is great. Like, I remember that being like one of my favorite parts. I was like, yes, hit points. I'm finally not dying at first level. Like,
I think it's no, I agree, and I think it was the simplification of math. Like 4th edition, it's definitely got that, or 5th edition has that flatter math curve.
And I like that.
Yeah, you know, it's all about your damage output, your HP values. Those are one thing, but really what you're watching out for as a DM is action economy. Like, how many attacks are the players getting every turn versus how many attacks the monsters are getting. And that's where you run into trouble. And I think, the 4th edition, that's, like I said, my biggest gripe about 4th edition is combat. And that's really kind of sad because that's where 4th edition has all of this great crunch to it. And my solution to it is just to fucking make, if it wasn't a minion before, it is now, or it's, you know, maybe got half to a quarter of the original HP, just because combat can carry on in 4th edition. And it just drives me up the fucking.
Well, and it was staged differently too, because you had encounter powers and you had daily powers. It was almost begging you, if you wanted to make those matter, to run multiple encounters per session.
Absolutely.
Like I said, it was built for a dungeon going room to room to room sort of feel to it, because like our game, if you watched us on Everstorm, you see we usually have like a larger combat, and then we'll drop to role play for a half a session or more.
Yeah.
And then maybe another one big combat like emerges, but like it's not in the same day. It's not, you know, like there's time that passes between. We're not in a war. We're going from battle to battle across the battlefield. You know, we're having these
that was a distinct weakness for our group. Yeah.
Like, and so for me, it was like I felt like daily powers were just really powerful encounter powers, because we'd play one encounter, you threw everything you had at it because you knew there wasn't another one coming for a while, and then you just it's for me, that's what sucked the wind out of it for our group, was the way that we play our games. It never fit with it well. Like
I definitely see that. It's group conditioning. I had to torture my players to train them not to do that, because you know, with I feel like story-wise, it fits that you don't have multiple fights every day, because who would fucking survive that?
Yeah.
I mean, I helped my kid fix his bike this morning, and like, if you ask me to fix another bike, like, you can go fuck yourself. So if I got into a fight with a bunch of fucking orcs and then you asked me to do it again, like, no, I'm gonna die. So multiple combats a day, I think it doesn't fit, like, story-wise and thematically. I don't like it. But you're right, people will abuse those daily powers. So I always had to make sure, like, if I get the inkling that someone's really abusing those daily powers, then I have to start throwing in more fights.
Yeah, and that's what we found too, is that we had to start staging multiple layers of fights just to make people have to think about when they were going to use some of those.
Yeah, but an alternative way you can address that, instead of changing your narrative and the structuring of your game, just say that each daily power, when you wake up, you roll a d6. On a 5 or 6, you have access to it. If you don't get it, you don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, that is one way to do it. It's more tracking.
Sure.
And
but it's a lot better than restructuring your entire game.
That's true. And go
ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's amusing that I say that, because I don't like restructuring the narrative. And I've always been real honest with my players. Like, I'm going to write what makes sense for this dungeon. What makes sense may not be good for you. You may come across something and you're going to look at it hard and it's going to die, or you're going to come across something and it's just going to squish you in one hit, and that's all it's going to be. And so I get your point. Like, I don't like having to change narrative, because I like putting what makes sense for the story.
Right. And that's where, and this is one of the things I've been kind of talking about, and I think we said this with Jowsum a few weeks back when he was on here with us, is that there's so many other good systems out there to play in. Don't try to change 4th Ed to be something it's not. Yeah. Find a game that will tell the story you want to tell better than what you're doing. Whether that's, he's using Forbidden Lands and the other game, Handler, that you guys are, messing with. Like, those systems tell a very different kind of story than Dungeons and Dragons. Like, if Dungeons and Dragons, the edition you're playing, is not the game that's going to tell the story you want to tell, find a game out there that will. Right. And so, to me, instead of making tracking mechanics and everything else to make 4th Ed fit your story, find another game system that's going to work better. And that's where I don't like to do those things. Like, I want to just scrap it and go to something that'll do better for what I want to do.
I have a story, not 4th edition related, but on that topic. I have a story, and I'm going to make you listen to it.
Just shove it down our throats. Let's go. I'm ready.
My group that we're playing with right now, it's actually, we've been playing for a pretty long time in this current iteration. But before we started streaming, it was a lot bigger group, because it was, I just kind of put out there like, hey, I was in between games. I didn't have a real solid group of people who wanted to be players at that time. So I just put it out on Facebook, like, who the fuck wants to come play D&D with me? And I got 12 people. And I just said, yes.
That is a colossal group.
So by the time gameplay started, enough people dropped. We were down to 9 players. And I'm like, all right, we need to talk about what system we want to play. And I'm like, 5th edition, I think, will accommodate this better than a lot of the other systems out there, like looking at 4th edition, looking at Pathfinder. And there was one guy who was just, no, I can only play Pathfinder. I refuse to play anything else. And I was trying to be accommodating. Okay. He's just like, I don't have it in me to learn another game system.
Oh, okay. That's their argument.
So I'm like, okay, we'll play Pathfinder. We start playing Pathfinder. And this one guy and his other friend who was, he brought in with him, they knew every rule, and they knew every part of every rule. And they would listen to everything I said and use those rules to maximum advantage against it. And it just drove me off the wall. Like, I was describing, like, I started the game off by killing the party in a dream. Like, that was the intro to it was a prophetic dream. And they fought this dragon, and, during this dream sequence fight that we were going through, I would describe something. And one was like, well, what's like the width of this or that, or, this, or like, how long is this thing's neck? And I'm like, I don't like, let's go fucking like 20 feet. Like, well, if it's 20 feet, it means this dragon is actually this size, which means my abilities here and here do this over there. And I'm like, whoa, fuck you. We're not gonna. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up home ruling. I started cutting shit out. Cutting shit out. And I finally got it where I enjoyed running it and they weren't abusing it. And I'm just like, I just remade 5th edition with Pathfinder.
Yeah.
And
that was always my problem with Pathfinder too, to a degree. Like I said earlier, it was too much that way for me to enjoy it as much as I have 5th ed so far.
Right. And so eventually I realized this. I'm like, guys, we're switching to 5th edition. And this dude and his friend, like, well, we're leaving. I'm like, all right, I guess that's how the cards fall in this shit. See ya. Like, no hard feelings, but I ain't doing this shit.
Yeah, with a group that size, you have to have a system that's fast. And Pathfinder is not fast.
Yeah. So, luckily I'm down to 6 players right now. So
that's in the reasonable range. It's still a lot.
I love all of my players and they're great friends of mine, but sometimes I'm sitting here writing adventures. I'm like, you know what? If I had 5 players instead of 6, this would be great. But it's like, asked to choose which kid you want to leave at the bus station. You can't do it.
So you invented the meat grinder.
I invented the meat grinder.
Only 5 of you were getting through this.
He didn't invent it. He found it for $20 online somewhere.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That's fantastic. But yeah, at one point in there, I think we were talking about combat in 4th edition. And this is a point that I keep saying, like, I need to bring it up. So I'm going to bring it up now while I'm thinking about it.
Go for it.
The combat problem I have in 4th edition, it is kind of math intensive. It's longer. Everything has huge hit point totals. You've got to constantly be paying attention to everything you do. But the thing that really drives me up the wall are those fucking players, man. Like those guys.
It wasn't for all the players.
No,
my story would be so cool if they'd quit fucking up my narrative.
It's the Clerks mentality.
That's like I said, I love my players, and this group is actually really, really solid about it. And we did run into the trouble a little bit, but last time playing 4th edition, everyone has to be paying attention. Mm-hmm. Everyone has to be ready to go. Everyone has to already have what they're doing ready on their turn. And, when we played it before, it's all right, dude, it's your turn. What are you doing on your turn? And then he's like, oh, well, can you explain to me where we're at? Which is just bad player etiquette anyway.
Oh, wow.
But then it's, okay, I need to look through the book to find what power I'm going to use. And then I need to make sure that the squares line up. And that was my biggest frustration with 4th edition.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like the specific players you had, though.
Yeah, and that was, this last playthrough for 4th edition went way better. It was still long-winded for my taste, but it was a lot more fun, and it was definitely, I used to have a Nerf gun that I kept at the table.
Oh, no.
And if people weren't paying attention, I'd shoot them.
You're like a teacher in a classroom at this point. You're throwing sandbags at people who are sleeping in class here.
That's it. No, actually, that's really funny because at least half of the players in my group right now, I used to be a teacher for. So, they're very used to me yelling at them. So it's fucking great.
Man, that really helps. That is something I did not consider.
Yeah, like most of them, I was their teacher, and then I also worked at IT at the school, and then so I hired them all on as student workers too.
Oh, wow. So you really had them by the balls.
Yeah. Like, I tell them to go fucking do something. They don't even fucking question it anymore. Like,
now, see, this is the interesting thing. Like, you were talking about having problems with your players paying attention in 4th ed. I found 4th ed was the one system when I really played it where like I didn't have a problems not paying attention when it wasn't my turn. Because there were cool classes like Warlord that was like, hey, take another attack, Dustin. Yeah, hit him again. Hey, now you get to do this too. Move again over there, my friend. Okay, cool, you're moving. Like,
there's so many
it was so team synergy part that like
Right.
I don't know how you have if you have problems there. I can't imagine like in 5th ed where literally I'm not doing anything until everyone else is taking a
Well,
turn. And like
yeah, a lot of the people who are giving me a lot of the trouble aren't in the group anymore, which is that fixed a lot of the problems. Those of us who were in the group, they either weren't the problem then, or we've just matured as players. So, but I mean, yeah, 4th edition. I mean, like you get a good warlord in there, and it's fucking crazy.
So good.
Class.
Why is there not a warlord in 5th ed?
There is.
Warlord in 5th
Battle
ed.
Master is kind of.
Yeah, but he just does things on his own. He doesn't let other people do things.
He has the ability to give attacks and stuff.
Does he?
And movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a fighter? Is that one of the fighter?
It's a fighter. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I just haven't looked into that one enough yet.
DM Alex, when we made the switch into the full version of 5th edition, he was so disappointed. He's like, I want my warlord. Where the fuck is my warlord?
I know.
By far the coolest class from 4E.
Yeah.
Like, no doubt about it.
Yeah. It was
Oh, see, I want them to make, instead of it just being one of the fighter branches, I want it as its own class, and I want it to have like 4 of its own.
Yeah,
like,
but then you
whatever
get all
call it
the
underneath there.
diehard truists out there be like, well, Warlord was never a class in any of the classic D&Ds. And I
Neither
can't
was
believe you're
Sorcerer.
changing my stuff over
Yeah.
here.
Neither
I
was
mean-
Sorcerer before 3rd ed, right? Like, wasn't that a new addition in 3rd ed?
When did they bring Thief into fucking D&D? Like way the fuck back then, and people were furious about it. Like,
Mhm.
so I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of the hate on 4th edition is that thing, that nostalgia factor. Like, this isn't my D&D. And so people are pissed, and that's what I think you mentioned earlier. Like a lot of new people coming into it, like me, I didn't have that nostalgia thing.
You know, the wackiest thing about this to me is it's not D&D for me crowd. Like, okay, keep playing with the books you have.
Right.
Like,
You don't have to buy the new version.
I shit on the new edition that you just don't have to play.
I used to work in this other town at this other hospital, and there was a guy there who ran D&D, and he was considerably older than me, and by probably 20 years. And his group were all older guys at the time. And I went over there to play their games, and I sit down to make a character, and he pulls out these relic-like books for me. I'm like, this is 1st ed D&D. I'm like, I didn't even know these books, anyone still played this edition. He goes, well, we looked at 2nd ed and we decided that we didn't need all those newfangled rules. We would he kind of homebrewed his own set of rules for 1st ed. And that's just what they did. Like 20, 30 years later, they're still just playing 1st ed D&D. They just never moved on.
What are you? I'm an elf.
Yeah, literally. It was like, you're a magic user. I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. Like
Dungeon Crawl Classics. That was a fun thing to explain. Like, if you roll that you're a dwarven blacksmith, when you finally get a level, you're just a fucking dwarf, and that's your
same thing.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a wild way to look at it from back then.
We should probably do an episode about those old school movements, because I am definitely the inverse of that. Like, that has no appeal to me whatsoever.
Oh man, I would sign up for I'd sign up for your game Friday if I could. Like right now, I would do it because it's.
I am super down with running this again for you guys.
If only the schedules would work out, but I would totally do it sometime.
Yeah, just hit me up afterwards. I can make shit work. My wife, she is super fucking cool about this shit. So, I'll make it work.
Mine's
That's
not
awesome.
so much. He's going to come busting through the door any minute, probably.
Oh man.
I'm glad it's there for the people that really enjoy it, though. And kind of circling back to that, if you don't like an edition, just don't play it.
Yeah, don't play it.
This old school movement is there for a sizable chunk of players, and they're loving that stuff. So good for them.
And I just think, like I said, like all the different versions of D&D, even just within D&D, like you can tell different stories with them. Like there are some stories I can think of in my head where 4th edition's the right edition for it.
Mhm.
If I really wanted to run a big long dungeon, like you look at like one of the other guys that's recently I started watching more of was Scuzz, and he's getting ready to do like Dungeon of the Mad Mage.
Yeah.
And it's like from level 5 to 20, and it's all one dungeon. I mean, it's just this giant 23 level dungeon. Like that's perfect for 4th ed.
Right.
Like why was that module never put out in 4th ed? That thing's great. That's exactly what it's made for. Like
absolutely. Quick, what we were talking about, 1st edition basic D&D. If you guys want to check some of that shit out, of Steam, Steel, and Murder podcast, they went through and they played some original fucking D&D, and they've got those episodes up. So
Awesome.
you're,
Oh, that's
you're
awesome.
needing that for your ears. Go check out Bert. He does some cool shit.
Yeah, go ahead and type that in the chat if you would, so the viewers over there can actually
things
find
out
it.
there.
I should do that.
And while you're working on that,
Yeah, it's time for our next topic, I think, probably.
yeah, we're gonna move on here. But also, as he's working through doing that, on the panels down there, there is a panel there for Defenders of Kobold that will take you directly to Chuck's Twitch. You can go there, give him a like and a follow, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So make sure when this thing's over at the end of the night, you go ahead and you do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're here to cross promote, guys, because
Absolutely.
we're in this together.
Yeah. And I am desperate for attention. I'm thirsty. Just please acknowledge my existence.
Well, we've had a
Time
good
and energy
chat
worth
with Thori. Our other topic was one I'm actually rather excited to talk about, so I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get to it. And that was how to do evil characters in a game. And just like that, we're going to be wrapping up this part of the episode, but I hope you stick around for the next one where we do get in that topic of how to play evil characters successfully and how not to screw up your game in the process. Now, I want to say a big thank you to DM Chuck for coming along from Kobold Defenders and making sure that you give them some support as well. And speaking of that, make sure you please give us some support. If you're enjoying this content, you want more, if you got suggestions for topics, or if you want to appear on the show, come check us out on our Discord channel, and that should be down in the description for you. Also, please make sure you give a like and subscribe for more content. If you want to check out my personal content, my Let's Play series of difficult games played difficultly, go ahead and check out Rain Survives on YouTube. Also a link in the description. And if you want to check out some MMO play, some sneak thievery, and some overall thugnaciousness, check out Dustin's Plague State, where he does, I think, mostly Arcade these days, and you'll find a link to that in the description as well. So until next time, ta-ta!